They should be coming. Yes.
All right.
I think we're live streaming now as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, we're live.
Give it another minute or two. Mr. Hands, I think we'll go ahead and get started and hopefully a couple more members will drift in.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Maryland State Board of Education's Education Policy Committee. We thank you for being here this evening, giving us your time, and for your interest in our work this evening. Before we get started, I would like to welcome a new member to our committee this evening, and that is Abi Gadam. He is our new student member to the board. We're really happy you're here, Abi, and that you're going to be bringing your perspective and your knowledge to our work today. So thank you so much for being here and for being on our committee.
Thank you also for having me. I'm really excited. This is my first committee meeting, so I'm really excited to see how it goes. Thank you.
We're excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here. All right, this evening we have several items up for just discussion, information only, and one item for action. So we're going to start with some of our, well, two items that are going to be permission to adopt that we're hoping to put on a consent agenda for next week, next week's board meeting, an information only item, and an action item. So let's start tonight with COMAR 13A.08.01.17, school use of reportable offenses. This is a permission to adopt, and I believe, Dr. Gable, you're addressing this item?
Yes, I am. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. So it says that the host disabled participant screen sharing. So is somebody going to share my materials?
Charlene, are you able to give Mary
Gave you
access?
permissions, Mary, to share.
You just did?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let me see. We will begin with the first document here. It says I'm screen sharing. Can you see that? So it should be a chart.
We can see,
and
Mary.
You can see a Comar 13A0117. Can you see it? Okay, great.
Yes, thank you.
So this is a little unusual. I wanted to, because this is a Comar that has been before the board, and this will be coming back for adoption, but there were 2 requests for permission to publish. So I thought it would be best to start with a little review of the timeline that has occurred. So just as a review, what's a reportable offense? I just included the definition there, and it's a serious criminal offense. So not just any, but in the list of serious criminal offenses that occur off school property, not at an event sponsored by the school, and they are dictated by statute and include serious offenses such as murder, arson, armed carjacking, sexual assault. So pretty serious. So there's a review of the timeline. July, a year ago, 2023, this Comar regulation came before you, the state board, requesting permission to publish. And all of the information is included, but we went through all of the changes, the amendments to Comar based on the statute. The state board at that time approved permission to publish, and the Comar regulation went out to the state board, went out for permit in the Maryland Register from October 6th through November 6th. The regulation came back to the state board for review. I brought it to you. As you know, there's kind of a pause during legislation and so on. On March 26th, brought all of the comments back to you, to the state board, brought it to the committee also. And with the request, we went through all of the feedback that we had. There were 3 major comments that were submitted. We reviewed all of those comments, and based on the comments, there were 3 items that came from the comments that MSDE suggested that we accept. They were determined to be substantive. We brought them to you, the state board, and you approved that we would put it out again for to be posted in the Maryland Register. So again, it went out from May 31st to July 1, just a little bit ago, with those 3 new amendments. There was one comment. It is a letter from a group which is in the transmittal. And in that, we received a series of comments. Based on that review, which I'll go over, MSDE has no request for further amendments, and we recommend adoption of the amendments to Comar 13A0801.17, school use for reportable offenses. So I would like to, with the permission of the board, go through those comments that came to you so you know what they are. So I'm going to stop sharing this document and go back to sharing and see if I can find the comments. And so now you should be looking at a table which has the comments, and I hope you can.
Yes, we can see it.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
So there was one letter, and the
Can you
letter
make it a little bit bigger?
I certainly will, Ken. Oops, probably too big. Hold on. Is that better?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're certainly welcome. So I will go through all their comments. Most of their comments, if not all, were comments that were made previously. So, and my light goes out in my office, so I will turn my light on again if I can get it on. I will go through them, and the recommendations from MSD, I will tell you, are pretty much the same recommendations that we gave previously. So the first, and the letter came, one letter from the Maryland Suspension Representation Project and the Maryland Coalition to Reform School Discipline. The first comment had to do with the definition of a regular school program. They recommend that the regular school program be defined, meaning the school the student attended prior to the charge, including classes, courses, and related services to the student that the student was enrolled in. There is a rationale there, which you've been able to read and can read. I will not go into all of it, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. The recommendation from MSDE, again, does not recommend changing the definition of the regular school program. We are not looking at it as having to be the school, a school, but it should be the courses, the classes, and related services. MSD believes that the definition reinforces the balance between the right of the student, and that's what the principal and the superintendent are always balancing, the right of the student with the reportable offense to maintain access to their educational program and the safety of the specified school building. The next comment was on imminent threat of serious harm. They continue to recommend that imminent threat of serious harm be defined, and the definition include the following language, and they were defining it, quote, posing likely and immediate danger of significant physical injury. The terminology imminent threat of serious harm is contained in language of reportable offenses. It's contained in discipline. It's contained in restraint and seclusion. Our recommendation continues to be that we review all of the definitions that are included in imminent threat of serious harm. It's also in IDEA, and that we look at all of that and we then define with one common definition, which we will use in guidance for all. We did not recommend changing it for one in reportable offenses and not addressing everywhere that it's contained. The next one is the notice of reportable offense charge or arrest alone may not be the basis for change in the student's regular school program. That was one of the 3 recommendations previously that we accepted, and we did put that out again for public comment. So this is just thank you for doing that. So that that amendment would be part of what you would accept as a state board if you accepted the amendments to the regulation. The third is the safety determination. They continue to believe that additional guidance is required on safety determination process. The school principal, we say that the school principal in consultation with appropriate staff members shall consider whether students' presence presents a risk to the safety of other students and staff, and whether and how such risk can be mitigated through interventions or support. Clarification of what it means to make a determination regarding the reportable offense and safety will be covered in guidance. Again, we are always balancing what goes in regulation and also what goes in guidance. And pretty much for anything like this, as we did for restraint and seclusion, there is significant guidance that will ultimately accompany. The next one is the appeal timeline and notice of appeal rights. It was requested, this is the second of 3 that we did accept and put out that now require written determination and notice of appeal rights that would be included, not just a phone call, that it would have to be in the letter. We did require that in the amendment, and they recognize that. The next one is the proposed regulations require review of placement upon notice of disposition pending notification from the state's attorney. We have said that the student safety plan and placement should be reviewed every 45 days. This is asking that it be reviewed every 30 days. We would say that every 30 days is placing an undue burden on the LEA. However, we would also say that nothing prevents the school from doing a shorter term. It could be they do a review at 45 days and within 15 days, something comes up, they could do a review. So the LEAs are required to review a placement every 45 days at a minimum. Nothing in the regulation precludes them from more frequently. And we will also address and explain that in guidance. The next one provides no guidance or direction to the school systems as a student's right to attend the regular school program when a school system becomes aware of a charge post-disposition. This is really very similar to a previous. Our proposed regulation is not silent on how long. The COMAR is clear that a student's placement will be reviewed every 45 days and upon notification of disposition from the state's attorney. The regulation review of 45 days, rather than providing the LEA with boundless power to exclude a student from the regular school program, the regulation ensures that safety plans are regularly reviewed, and guidance will further clarify and explain this exception. The next one is the third of three. We propose that in addition to special education, that a manifestation determination review must be scheduled for any student with a Section 504 plan. We agreed with that, put that out for publishing, and you approved that. And so they're appreciating that and accepting it. The next one is a question about what level of service a student receives upon removed for a reportable offense. Students who have been removed from the regular school program, it's not, we absolutely agree, it is not a suspension, it is not an expulsion. And we say that under the proposed regulation, removal from the student's regular school program and placement requires the development of a safety plan. It does address educational programming and related services. Every effort should be made to provide the student with equivalent level of services to the extent practicable. It's possible that a student may be able to access the full range. However, the school must strive to maintain a school environment that's safe and secure, again, always balancing that. We did also add that a student must remain on track to earn the required credits for graduation. So it is a school responsibility to ensure that we continue to do that. We also added some data. As you are aware, we do collect data annually on reportable offenses. We are in the process of collecting that for the 23-24 school year. We don't have that data yet, but in the 22-23 excuse me, school year, we did indicate 86.7 of the students accused were retained in their regular school program, 3.4 in virtual, 3.8 on home and hospital, 2.3 in an alternative school, 0.6% went to a night school, and 0.3 were transferred to another school, either within or outside of the district. That concludes the comments that were made and our recommendation. Based on this review, based on having put it out for in the Maryland Register on 2 occasions, we are recommending to the State Board adoption of the COMAR with the amendments that you have in your packet. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Let me change my view here. All right. Is there anyone that has any questions for Dr. Gable? Okay, then with the committee's seeing if without objection from the committee, we will put this in a consent agenda for next time. Are there any objections to that? Okay, seeing none, we'll put that in consent agenda for next time. Thank you, Dr. Gable. I appreciate your time.
Welcome, it's Mary. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, out in public, I thought I should call you Dr. Gable.
Yeah, but I'm not a doctor, so I'm just.
Oh, I thought you were.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was. So you can just call me Mary. It's good.
Thank you, Ms. Gable. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, our next order is Comar 13A.07.02.01 contracts, permission to adopt, and I believe that Ms. Meadows is going to brief us on this one.
Yes, good evening. So this particular amended regulation was brought to the board on March 26th, 2024, and the board did grant permission to publish. It was in the Maryland Register for 60 days, and we received one public comment. That public comment was from Montgomery County Public Schools, and that comment centered around potential need for clarification in the contract regulations, specifically with regard to the word license and how it could potentially be misinterpreted by other entities. For example, they gave a very specific example, will a hospital inadvertently think that a licensed school psychologist has the same ability to request an emergency petition as a clinical psychologist would, and that license is issued from the Department of Health. Our response at this point in time is we are not recommending any substantive changes. 13A12 educator licensure, which was adopted, complete repeal and replacement adopted in December by this board, is the chapter of regulations that defines the roles and responsibilities of each of the individual specialists where this could potentially have some confusion. We think that we can absolutely tackle this through guidance if required. And so therefore we are not recommending that the board make substantive changes at this time. So we are asking that the State Board of Education adopt these amendments as they were published in the register.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have questions, comments? Okay, seeing none without objection, I'm also going to put this on consent agenda for Tuesday's meeting. Does anyone object to that? All right, seeing no objection, we'll add that to a consent agenda item for Tuesday's meeting. Thank you so much. And then we will now move on to an information only on the EdTPA PPAT assessments. And Ms. Meadows, I think that's also you.
It is still me. So now turning to the EdTPA and the PPAT. So this, as you stated, this purpose of this item is an informational item. As a reminder, part of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future requirements, specifically in Maryland Code Education Article 6-126, requires that teacher candidates that are graduating from Maryland approved teacher preparation programs pass certain licensure requirements. And as a reminder, those requirements include demonstrating mastery on a basic skills measure, demonstrating content knowledge, demonstrating the ability to teach reading, and demonstrating pedagogical knowledge. And so the EdTPA and the PPAT are really focused on that last requirement, which is the pedagogical knowledge and skills. What the law goes on to say is that there are two ways in which a teacher candidate can demonstrate this knowledge. One is through the use of a nationally recognized portfolio-based assessment. The EdTPA and the PPAT are the two nationally recognized assessments that this board adopted for this purpose. Or as of this most recent legislative session, if the individual has the opportunity, and not all candidates will, they can fulfill this requirement in LEA induction if the LEA is willing to develop an induction program and portfolio component that meets the eligibility requirements in the law. So really that's what we're honed in on for this piece. The MSDE recognizing that this is a brand new requirement starting July 1st, 2025, all teacher candidates, regardless of where they're being prepared in Maryland and what area of licensure they're being prepared in, must pass this, demonstrate by either passing these assessments or doing the induction. Recognizing that this is a new and pretty robust process for our educator preparation programs and our teacher candidates, we are looking to phase in a passing score. This is what most states do when they adopt these assessments. And what I mean by that specifically is that starting July 1st, 2025, we are recommending that we set the passing score as any scorable entry on either of those assessments for a period of a norming year. so we can collect more robust data set with Maryland test takers, and then use that data, consult with our technical advisory committee, and then come back to the state board with an actual passing score that is what you would see closer to the recommended national passing score that is set across the nation. So that is our plan. So if you take a look at the memo that I provided, just to kind of walk you down a little bit further, from July 1st, 2025 through August 31st, 2026, we will use that as our norming year. You'll see it goes a little bit farther than a year because of the way the submission windows work for those assessments. We want to make sure we get that data for the August submissions. And again, we will consult with our technical advisory committee before we come back to the board. But also that year is going to allow our educator preparation programs to track their candidates' data at the institutional level and hone in on how they are going to remediate and support and work with those candidates to fill the gap of, okay, here's the national passing recommended score. This is where we're seeing our particular candidates scoring. What do we need to do in order to close that gap? And that is a process, and we recognize that as a process. So that year will also allow them to do that. So again, by September 2026, that's when we anticipate that we will be coming back to the State Board of Education to make a recommendation after that consultation with the Technical Advisory Committee and recommend a new passing score at that point. And then annually, every year thereafter, the blueprint does say we have to keep an eye on these assessments to make sure that they are not inadvertently causing a barrier for the diversity of our teacher workforce.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from anyone on the committee this evening or any board members?
I have a question.
Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, under background, actually under and the bullet points that you see there, Kelly, you said Maryland teacher candidates may demonstrate pedagogical knowledge by passing a national recognized performance-based assessment or completing a local educational agency's induction program that meets the criteria outlined in the law. I'm not familiar. Is the law COMAR Article 61226?
Yes, ma'am. So the statute 6-126 is exactly where you're going to find that language,
Okay.
and that is where it's going to give you the criteria for that induction program.
Okay. So how are we MSDE going to monitor the LEAs as their induction programs? How are we going to make sure that they have robust induction programs? That's my question.
Absolutely. So the law does go on to say that in order to implement this option, the LEA does have to submit their plan for induction, demonstrating that they have a portfolio-based component tied to that induction, and it is aligned to specific standards, which are the in-task standards, and that the department does have to review. And I believe the AIB has to review it too, if my memory serves, but I'm not looking at the statute.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Michael?
Thank you. A few questions. First, can someone, for the benefit of us and the public, remind us what the Technical Advisory Committee is?
Jeff, would you like to take that one, sir?
Trying to find my unmute button. Yes, thank you, Dr. Michael, for that question. And actually, we will be bringing on board a new technical advisory committee, but the primary purpose for this entity is to serve as an external review whenever we are considering changes such as anything that would require a specific expertise. And so in this instance, we would be asking for them to guide us and provide recommendations on the appropriate passing scores based on not only the test vendor recommendations, but also doing a national scan, which Ms. Meadows and her team has done as a starting place, because the law, as I remember, allows for each state to adopt its own appropriate scores or appropriate cut scores. And so we would be doing that in collaboration with our technical advisory committee to get feedback And also they provide us kind of a broader, more national body of expertise in reviewing what is appropriate, what is not appropriate as we review that. They will also, Dr. Michael, just as a going forward measure, they will also be assisting us in response to any recommendations that are made from our assessment and accountability task force. And depending on what those recommendations might entail, they would be supporting our efforts in a response as appropriate.
Great. Second question, knowing that this is, we're setting standards here for our prep programs, at the conclusion here with this assessment, as we're thinking about particularly our pipeline of teachers of color in the state. One of the things I'd love to learn a little bit more in the study year is how our teachers are performing by race, by district, by pathway. Kelly, Ms. Meadows, can you tell us a little bit more about how we're going to be studying this as we move forward?
Absolutely. So that is something that we are already looking at and will continue to look at. It's important that when we are aggregating the data or disaggregating the data, we're looking not only at race and ethnicity, but also gender. And really our plan internally is our educator preparation program team here at MSDE, as well as Ms. Smith, who's on the call tonight as our educator data coordinator, will be working closely and collaboratively with our educator preparation programs individually, institution by institution and program by program, to look at the data and to work in partnership to develop plans for how educator preparation programs are going to support all of their candidates, including their candidates of color. Who we need to, again, the blueprint calls out. We've got to ensure as we adopt these new requirements that we are not inadvertently setting up barriers for our candidates of color. So we foresee that being a very close partnership with our EPPs, Dr. Michael.
Great, thank you. And just we have to set this score in the law at some point. Is that who's required to do? Is it the superintendent that's required to do that? And I just want to make sure we're in compliance with what we need to do in terms of rolling this out.
Absolutely. So the Code of Maryland Regulation, it's 13A 120203A, I think.
Showing off.
That's right. Does state that for this particular assessment, as well as it goes on to state for all of the different types of assessment. The state superintendent of schools is responsible for setting a passing score, and the State Board of Education specifically is responsible for adopting assessments.
Okay. Do we have a timeline on this one? Like we have to set it by?
So we're setting the score as of July 1st, 2025 as any scorable assessment. And that's defined by the publishers, and we will provide guidance that digs into that for our EPPs.
This is a technicality for the board meeting when we hit this. Right now we're looking at it as information. I'm wondering if we still need to approve that so that we're meeting that, even though we're setting it as scorable. We don't need to iron that out right now, but depending on as we get to the board meeting next week, let's just iron that out and make sure we have that right. But I would just say, just as a final comment, I'm very supportive of our approach here. We're layering in a lot. We're raising standards on teacher prep, and a strategy of going slow to go fast, really makes a lot of sense. So that we're really ensuring that our standards are applied fairly, that our partners in teacher prep have the time to really adjust, make sure that they're providing appropriate supports. So fully supportive of this approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our last item this evening, and this is our only action item of the night, and this is about the Praxis Core Math subtest. And Ms. Meadows, I think it's still you. You're on the hot seat tonight.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So the purpose of this item is to request permission to discontinue the requirement of the Praxis Core Math subtest. And to give you a little bit of background on this assessment, this is one of 3 subtests that are a part of what's called the Praxis Core Battery. And this is a battery that assesses basic skills. It is required as an entry requirement into an educator preparation program. So really it's designed to measure whether an individual is going to be successful in their educator preparation program, which usually starts in the junior year, could be sophomore, but junior year of their bachelor's degree program. For the master's, it would be a different story. You would take it before enrolling in your master's program. So this particular test battery has been used by Maryland since it was published. It's been several years, and over the past several years as well, this board, in tandem with the Professional Standards Board, has worked very hard to repeal and replace the educator licensure requirements. And part of that work really was looking at eliminating any unnecessary barriers. So that occurred. We adopted those regulations in December. They became effective a few months ago in April. And then during the 2024 legislative session, we had Senate Bill 771 that expanded the ways in which a teacher candidate can demonstrate basic skills mastery in statute, and that was passed. And so currently what statute says is that an individual, again, a teacher candidate enrolled in a Maryland approved program, can demonstrate basic skills in one of 3 ways now. They can pass a basic, they call it basic literacy skills, basic skills, same thing. Basic literacy skills assessment approved by the Maryland State Board, score set by the state superintendent of schools. That's the Praxis Core, is an example of that. Or now, these are the new ones, they can earn a minimum overall cumulative grade point average of 3.0 on a 4.0 scale. We had been doing that in regulation for many years. Now it's codified in statute. And then finally, the brand new one is they may present effective evaluations from a local school system for 3 years. So given that this bill, the whole purpose of this bill was to expand the ways in which a candidate can demonstrate mastery of basic skills. We are recommending that we eliminate what has long been perceived as a barrier for those teachers who are not intending to provide instruction in the area of mathematics. And that's the Praxis Core Math subtest. It's important to note, I think that the original blueprint language, which just changed in 2024, asked the Maryland State Department of Education to adopt a basic skills literacy assessment that was on par with the assessment in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts does not require the math component of their basic literacy skills. So even before the 2024 legislative session, we were having conversations about, should we be eliminating this particular subtest in our basic literacy skills battery? For all of those reasons, MSDE is asking the board to consider discontinuing the requirement that all teachers take that Praxis Core Math subtest. And as a reminder, any teacher in Maryland who is going to be teaching mathematics, whether at the secondary level, middle school level, or elementary level, or early childhood level, is required to take a content assessment that includes math content. So the idea here is if we eliminate the math subtest for all teachers, we are potentially retaining those teachers that are going to be really great English, social studies, art teachers, phys ed teachers that don't necessarily have to teach math in their content area, while still retaining that content assessment requirement for those teachers who do need to teach mathematics. So with that, I will ask that the committee consider discontinuing the math core subtest.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from committee members or members of the board? Dr. Michael?
Ms. Meadows, can you walk us through, so content tests for secondary math teachers, what about elementary school teachers? Can, want to make sure that our elementary teachers that are responsible for, teaching elementary and intermediate grades math, but we know that they have competence in math. Can you tell us specifically how we measure their math competency?
Absolutely. So currently, we require elementary teacher candidates to take what's called the Praxis Content Knowledge of Teaching, or the CKT, and it's divided into 4 subtests: math, ELA, science, and social studies.
Great. And when would a teacher typically take that assessment in their continuum?
So usually we see that they're taking the content assessment around the junior year. So you usually would enroll into the educator preparation program component of your degree. We're talking bachelor's degree here, around the end of the sophomore, junior year. And at that point in time, they would most likely take the content. However, they do have the opportunity to pass that assessment until licensure. So there are absolutely individuals that need to take it later or need to retake it, and that is okay. But they do need to take it before, they need to pass it before they apply for licensure.
Great, thank you. So those content tests, for anybody, we're really not lowering standards here because we have, an even more specific measure for elementary and secondary math teachers on that content assessment. We're just not assessing twice, we're assessing once. Am I understanding that right?
Yes.
So Ms. Mellis, could you help me understand the difference between the math content knowledge assessment and the assessment that's on the Praxis core? The math assessment that's on the Praxis core.
Mm-hmm. So the Praxis core math subtest is designed to measure whether an individual is going to be successful in their educator preparation program. And the one that you mentioned, the secondary math Praxis content assessment, is designed to measure whether an individual has the math content knowledge to enter the classroom between grades 9 and 12. 7 and 12, apologies, 7 and 12.
So individual teachers who are teaching at the K-5 level,
Dr. Johnson, you're breaking up. Dr. Johnson, we can't hear you. You're breaking up. Is your
required to take I'm sorry.
That's okay. We missed almost everything you said there, but I think we can hear you now.
Okay, so my question is, for elementary school teachers who are teaching primarily math, how are we making sure that they have the content knowledge to do that if we're not assessing them?
So we will be assessing them. So for the elementary teachers specifically, in order to earn licensure, they will have to submit passing scores on the Praxis content knowledge for teachers, which is an elementary assessment that includes the 4 subtests, including math. So math, ELA, science, and social studies. They will still have to take that assessment.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that we were not taking them out of the assessment altogether. Thank you for clarification.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing no questions, the state superintendent is requesting that our committee recommend to the full board that we discontinue the use of the Praxis Core Math subtest as a requirement for initial teacher licensure. Do I have anyone on the committee to make that motion?
So moved.
So moved and seconded by Dr. Maley McCarthy. And so, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll put the vote to the committee members. All in favor of recommending that the board discontinue the Praxis Core Math subtest as a requirement for teacher licensure, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Looks unanimous. Thank you very much. We will make that recommendation to the broader board. And that concludes our business for this evening. So thank you everyone for being here this evening. Thank you to all the staff that supports our work every month when we come into this meeting. I would love to be able to tell you our next meeting time, but we are going to be changing over some members of the board in the next month and changing around some of our committees. So I do not have an exact date and time for our next committee meeting, but when we do have our committees established and meeting times established, you will find them on the State Board website, MSDE website, and I look forward to reconvening our committee at that time. Thank you everyone for a great evening, and I'll see everybody at the board meeting on Tuesday. Thank you.